The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council floated in orbit around Harmonex Prime, a neutral world chosen centuries ago, when the elder races first decided they needed a place to settle their differences without bloodshed. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive ring of transparent metal that allowed the delegates to see the stars while they debated the fate of billions. Today, those stars seemed to watch with unusual interest. Admiral Vexthor of the Korthax Dominion stood at his podium, his 4 arms crossed in a gesture that every species in the chamber recognized as displeasure. His scales, normally a deep crimson, had darkened to almost black. When he spoke, his voice rumbled through the translation systems like distant thunder. "The humans are hiding something," he said, his words cutting through the murmur of conversation. "For 6 months, they have withdrawn all diplomatic contact. Their trade ships no longer visit our ports. Their ambassadors have recalled to Earth, and our intelligence reports show massive resource consumption in their outer system." Counselor Thessa of the Zephyri Imperium tilted her elongated head, her silver skin catching the light from the nearby star. The Zephyri were ancient, older than most species could imagine, and they carried that age in every movement and word. She had seen civilizations rise and fall like waves on a shore. "Perhaps they are simply building infrastructure," she suggested, though her tone suggested she did not believe her own words. "Young species often go through periods of rapid internal development." "Infrastructure?" Vexthor's laugh was harsh. "They have stripped 3 asteroid belts to nothing. They are mining their gas giants at rates that should be impossible with their primitive technology. Our scouts report energy signatures that do not match any known human capability." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "They are building something large." The chamber erupted in discussion. Representatives from dozens of worlds began speaking at once, their voices creating a cacophony that the translation systems struggled to handle. The humans had been a joke since they stumbled into faster-than-light travel just 100 years ago. They were weak, fragile creatures who lived short lives and died from the simplest diseases. Their first contact with galactic civilization had been a disaster when raiders attacked their colony ships, and they had barely survived. The galaxy had learned to see them as harmless, perhaps useful for their creativity, but certainly not a threat. Ambassador Kryl of the Torvian Assembly raised his voice above the chaos. The Torvians were traitors, and they had dealt extensively with humanity. "I have tried to contact my business partners on Earth," he said, his tentacles writhing with concern. "They respond politely but say nothing of substance. This is not normal human behavior. They usually talk too much." "Exactly my point," Vexthor said. "Something has changed. I propose we send a fleet to investigate. A diplomatic fleet, naturally, but one with sufficient strength to remind the humans of their place in the galactic order." Counselor Thessa considered this. The Zephyri had not maintained their empire for 10,000 years by being reckless, but neither had they survived by ignoring potential threats. "How many ships?" she asked. 50 warships, Vexthor replied. "Enough to show we are serious, but not so many as to suggest we expect real resistance." The vote was called. It passed easily. Most of the council members were curious, some were concerned, but none believed that humanity could pose any real challenge. They were too young, too inexperienced, too weak. If only they had looked more carefully at human history, they might have noticed a pattern. Far from the council chambers, beyond the orbit of Neptune in the dark reaches of humanity's home system, something waited in the shadows. The construction facility had been built in secret, hidden among the debris of the Kuiper Belt, where sensors could not easily distinguish between natural objects and artificial ones. The facility itself was massive, a collection of shipyards and manufacturing plants that had consumed the resources of entire worlds. Thousands of workers lived here, human and robot working side by side in the cold darkness of space. They had been working for 5 years on a single project, the largest construction effort in human history. Captain Sarah Chen floated through the main corridor of that project, her magnetic boots keeping her anchored to the floor in the low gravity. She had been chosen to command this vessel, not because she was the most aggressive officer in the fleet, but because she was the most thoughtful. Humanity had learned hard lessons in its short time among the stars, and the most important lesson was this: sometimes the strongest weapon was the one you never had to fire. The corridor stretched ahead of her for what seemed like forever. The ship was 12 kilometers long, larger than some moons, and it contained technology that would make the rest of the galaxy question everything they thought they knew about warfare. "Captain Chen," a voice said through her comm. It was Commander Jackson, her second officer. "We have a situation. The Council has voted to send a fleet to investigate our activities." Sarah had been expecting this. The galaxy's powers could not ignore humanity forever, and the resource consumption required for this project had been impossible to hide completely. "How many ships?" she asked. 50 warships led by a Korthax admiral. They are calling it a diplomatic mission. Sarah smiled without humor. 50 warships was not diplomacy. It was intimidation. A show of force meant to remind humanity that they were small and weak and should remember their place. The Council had done this before to other species, and it usually worked. Usually. "Send a response," Sarah said. "Tell them they are welcome to meet with us at coordinates Alpha 7. We will be happy to discuss their concerns." "Should we power up weapon systems?" Jackson asked. "No," Sarah replied. "We are not starting this fight. But make sure every system is ready. If they want to see what humanity has built, we will show them exactly what we are capable of." She continued walking through the corridor, passing crew members who saluted as she went by. These men and women represented the best of humanity, drawn from every nation and background. They had trained for years for this moment, knowing that when the galaxy finally saw what they had created, everything would change. The ship's name was painted on a bulkhead ahead, letters 3 meters tall, UHSV Indomitable. It was a good name, Sarah thought. It captured everything humanity had become in its time among the stars. They had been beaten, dismissed, and underestimated. They had lost colonies to raiders and watched their people die because they lacked the strength to protect them. Never again. The Indomitable was not just a ship. It was a promise, a declaration that humanity would never again beg for the right to exist. They had built it in secret because they knew the galaxy would try to stop them, if they knew what was coming. They had poured every resource, every innovation, every desperate hope into this single vessel, and now the galaxy was coming to see it. Sarah reached the bridge and took her command chair. Around her, stations hummed with activity as the crew prepared for the arrival of the Council fleet. Holographic displays showed the Indomitable systems all reading green. Weapons, shields, engines, sensors, everything was ready. "Time until the fleet arrives?" she asked. 6 hours, Jackson replied. Sarah nodded. "Then we wait, and we show them that humanity is done being prey." Outside in the darkness of space, the Indomitable waited like a sleeping dragon, ready to wake. Fleet Commander Zelnoth sat in his command chair aboard the battlecruiser Eternal Victory and felt quite pleased with himself. Around him, 49 other warships of the Council fleet moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's distant sun. This was the kind of mission he enjoyed. Simple, straightforward, with no real danger but plenty of opportunity to remind lesser species of their place. The humans would see this fleet and understand. They would apologize for their secretive behavior, allow inspections of whatever foolish project they had been working on, and return to being the harmless, chattering creatures that caused no real problems. Perhaps they had built a larger space station or improved their mining operations. It did not matter. Nothing they could create would change the fundamental reality of galactic power. "Sir, we are approaching the coordinates the humans provided," his tactical officer reported. "All ships, maintain formation," Zelnoth ordered. "Power weapon systems to stand by. I want them to see we mean business, but we are not here to start a war." He smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth, just to remind them who rules the galaxy. The fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel in a coordinated burst, a maneuver that required precision and practice. It was meant to be impressive, and it usually was. 50 warships appearing at once was enough to make most civilizations reconsider any foolish notions of independence. For several seconds, there was silence on the bridge as the sensors adjusted to normal space. Then the tactical officer made a sound that Zelnoth had never heard him make before, a gasp of pure disbelief. "Commander," the officer said, his voice shaking. "You need to see this." The main display lit up, showing the sensor data from their position. At first, Zelnoth thought there was an error, that the sensors had mistaken an asteroid or small moon for a ship. But as the image resolved, he realized with growing horror that there was no mistake. The human ship hung in space like nothing he had ever seen before. It was massive, far larger than any vessel in the Council fleet. 12 kilometers long, perhaps 3 kilometers wide at its broadest point. It bristled with weapon systems that the sensors struggled to classify. Energy signatures pulsed across its hull in patterns that suggested technology far beyond what humanity should possess. The Council fleet, which had seemed so impressive moments ago, now looked like insects surrounding a sleeping giant. "What is that?" Zelnoth whispered. No one on the bridge had an answer. A communication request appeared on his console, audio only. Zelnoth accepted it, trying to regain his composure. He was a fleet commander of the Galactic Council. He would not be intimidated by a single ship, no matter how large. "This is Fleet Commander Zelnoth of the Galactic Council," he said, forcing confidence into his voice. "We are here to discuss your recent activities and to conduct inspections as authorized by Council Resolution 749. You will power down your weapons and prepare to receive our boarding teams." The response came in a human voice, female, calm and completely unbothered by the presence of 50 warships. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Human Space Vessel Indomitable. You came here with weapons powered and targeting systems active. That is not diplomacy, Commander. That is a threat. I suggest you reconsider your approach." Zelnoth felt his scales prickle with anger. How dare this human speak to him in such a manner? He had destroyed entire fleets. He had made civilizations kneel, and this upstart species thought they could challenge him? "Captain Chen," he said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "You do not seem to understand your situation. You have one ship. We have 50. You will comply with Council authority, or we will make you comply." There was a pause. Then Captain Chen spoke again, and this time there was something in her voice that made Zelnoth's confidence waver. Not fear, but something worse. Certainty. "Commander, I understand my situation perfectly. The question is whether you understand yours." Before Zelnoth could respond, one of his subordinate commanders broke formation. It was Captain Krelvax of the destroyer Burning Sword, a hot-headed young officer from a prominent Korthax family. Zelnoth had warned the Council about including him in this mission, but politics had overruled military sense. "I am tired of this human's arrogance," Krelvax announced over the fleet channel. "I will teach them respect." "Krelvax, stand down," Zelnoth ordered, but it was too late. The Burning Sword fired a plasma bolt at one of the Indomitable's sensor arrays. It was meant to be a warning shot, carefully calibrated to disable equipment without causing casualties. In any other situation, it would have worked perfectly. The plasma bolt struck the Indomitable's hull and simply vanished, absorbed by shielding technology that should not exist. The human ship did not even shudder from the impact. For a moment, everything was silent. 50 warships and one massive human vessel hung in space, waiting to see what would happen next. Then the Indomitable moved. Something that large should not be able to move like that. It should be slow, ponderous, relying on smaller escort ships for defense. Instead, it accelerated with the grace of a fighter craft, repositioning itself between the Council fleet and Earth in a maneuver that should have been impossible. Captain Chen's voice came over the channel again, but this time it was broadcast to every ship in the fleet on every frequency. "That was your warning shot, Commander. Here is mine." The space around the Indomitable suddenly lit up as thousands of small objects launched from its hull. Zelnoth's tactical officer identified them as defensive drones, but they were like no drones he had ever seen. They moved with impossible coordination, forming patterns and formations that would have required years of practice. "All ships, defensive positions," Zelnoth ordered, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Do not fire unless fired upon." But Krelvax was either too angry or too proud to listen. The Burning Sword fired again, this time with full weapons. Several other ships, seeing their comrade under what they perceived as attack, joined in. 20 warships against one. Under normal circumstances, it would be a massacre. It was a massacre, but not the kind Zelnoth had expected. The Indomitable's weapon systems came online with terrifying efficiency. Railguns fired projectiles at speeds that made them nearly impossible to track. They struck with the force of nuclear weapons, pure kinetic energy that tore through shields and armor like paper. Directed energy weapons lanced out with surgical precision, targeting engine systems and weapons rather than life support. The human ship was not trying to kill them. It was trying to disable them, and somehow that was more frightening than if it had simply opened fire with intent to destroy. The Burning Sword lost its engines within the first 30 seconds. Two other ships went dark as their power systems were systematically taken offline. The defensive drones swarmed around the attacking ships, disrupting their targeting systems and creating false sensor readings that made coordination impossible. "Cease fire," Zelnoth ordered. "All ships cease fire immediately." Slowly, the shooting stopped. The remaining ships that had joined the attack drifted in space, crippled but intact. Their crews were alive, their life support still functioning, but they were completely helpless. The Indomitable had disabled 20 warships in less than 5 minutes, and it had barely seemed to exert itself. Captain Chen's voice came over the channel once more. "Commander Zelnoth, I did not want this fight. But you need to understand something. Humanity is done being the galaxy's victim. We built the Indomitable because every time we tried diplomacy, we were treated like prey. Every time we asked for protection, we were told to pay tribute. Every time we sought fair trade, we were exploited." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We are not your enemy. We do not want to conquer or destroy. But we will never again beg for the right to exist. You came here to intimidate us, to remind us of our place. Instead, let me remind you of something. The galaxy is larger than the Council, and power is not the same as wisdom." Zelnoth stared at the display showing the Indomitable. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful, was now a joke. 20 of his ships were crippled, and the remainder would not fare any better if the fighting resumed. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want you to leave," Captain Chen replied. "Take your damaged ships and go. Return to the Council and tell them that humanity is no longer a species that can be pushed around. Tell them we seek peace, but we have the strength to enforce it. And tell them that if they come here again with threats, they will find us ready." Zelnoth wanted to argue, wanted to salvage some pride from this disaster, but he was not a fool. He had been beaten thoroughly and completely, and continuing the fight would only result in more humiliation. "Fleet, prepare to withdraw," he ordered. "Retrieve the damaged vessels and plot a course back to Harmonex Prime." As his fleet began the slow process of collecting the crippled ships, Zelnoth looked one last time at the Indomitable. It hung in space like a monument to human determination, and he knew that everything had changed. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and watched the Council fleet retreat. The damaged ships were being towed by their companions, limping back toward Harmonex Prime like wounded animals. She felt no joy in their defeat, only a deep weariness that came from knowing this was not over. "Captain, we are receiving multiple communications from Earth," Commander Jackson reported. "The President wants a full report. So does Fleet Command, the Security Council, and about 50 news organizations." "Tell them I will report after we secure the area," Sarah replied. "And remind the news people that this incident is classified for the next 48 hours. They will get their story, but not until we know what the Council's response will be." She turned to her tactical officer, Lieutenant Morrison. "What is our status?" "All systems green, Captain. We use less than 5% of our ammunition reserves. Shield generators are at 97% efficiency. No damage to any systems." Morrison looked up from his console, his young face showing a mix of pride and disbelief. "They never even scratched us." "They were not trying to destroy us," Sarah said. "Not at first. That commander wanted to intimidate us, and when one of his subordinates got trigger happy, the rest followed." "Classic pack mentality, and will they come back?" Jackson asked. Sarah considered the question. "Not immediately. But yes, eventually. We humiliated them. The Council cannot let that stand without a response." She pulled up a holographic display of the Indomitable's weapon systems. During the brief engagement, they had only used a fraction of their capabilities. The railguns that had torn through Council shields like tissue paper were the oldest technology on the ship, barely an improvement over what humanity had been using for decades. The real weapons, the experimental systems that had consumed years of research, had not even been activated. "Morrison, how many of their ships could we have disabled in that engagement if we had used full capabilities?" The lieutenant ran the calculations. "All of them, Captain. Probably in under 2 minutes," Sarah nodded. She had known the answer, but hearing it confirmed made the reality sink in deeper. Humanity had built something unprecedented, a weapon system so advanced that the galaxy's military powers looked like children playing with toys in comparison. It was terrifying. Not because of what the Indomitable could do to others, but because of what others might try to do to prevent humanity from building more. Open a channel to Earth Command, Sarah ordered. Priority Alpha. A moment later, Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on the display. The Admiral was in her 70s, a veteran of humanity's first contact war, and one of the chief architects of the Indomitable project. She looked tired but satisfied. Captain Chen, I have been watching the sensor feeds. Excellent work, thank you, Admiral. But we have a problem. We showed them what we can do, which was the goal. Now we need to deal with the consequences. The Council will not take this lightly, Okonkwo agreed. We estimate they have 3 possible responses. 1, they accept the new reality and begin treating us as equals. 2, they try to negotiate from a position of weakness, which they are not good at. 3, they gather their full military strength and try to destroy us before we can build more ships. I am betting on option 3, Sarah said. As am I. Which is why we are accelerating the construction of the other Indomitable-class vessels. The Resilience will be operational in 6 months instead of a year. The Defiance and Perseverance will follow. Okonkwo leaned forward. But 6 months is a long time, Captain. Can the Indomitable hold off a full Council assault alone? Sarah pulled up projections her tactical team had been running since they first designed the ship. If they come at us with everything they have, several thousand ships, then no. We can take hundreds, maybe even 1,000 with the right tactics. But not their entire military. We would eventually be overwhelmed. Then we need to make sure they do not commit their entire military, Okonkwo said. I want you to take the Indomitable on a tour. A tour? Sarah raised an eyebrow. We need allies, Captain. The Council maintains power by keeping other species weak and divided. But there are civilizations out there who are tired of bowing to the Zephyri and Korthax. The Torvian Assembly has been quietly reaching out, asking about trade agreements and mutual defense. The Pelnari Confederation lost 3 colonies to Council-sanctioned raids last year and received no justice. Even some of the smaller Korthax clans are unhappy with the current leadership. Sarah understood immediately. You want me to show them the Indomitable, to prove that the Council can be challenged? Exactly. We cannot stand alone, but we do not have to. If enough species decide they are tired of being bullied, the Council will have to choose between negotiation and fighting a multi-front war they cannot win. It was a dangerous strategy, but Sarah could see the logic. Humanity had spent a century being the weak newcomer, learning how the galaxy really worked. They had seen how the Council operated, through fear and division, never allowing potential rivals to unite. Now humanity had a chance to change that dynamic. I will need authorization to make diplomatic commitments, Sarah said. You will have it. I am sending Ambassador Rodriguez to join you. She is young, but she understands that sometimes diplomacy needs a battleship in the background. Okonkwo smiled grimly. Show them the Indomitable, Captain. Show them that the galaxy does not have to be run by fear. The channel closed and Sarah turned back to her bridge crew. They were all watching her, waiting for orders. These men and women had trained for years to crew this ship, and now they were about to become ambassadors whether they liked it or not. Set course for the Torvian home system, Sarah ordered, and send a message ahead. Tell them the United Human Space Vessel Indomitable would like to discuss matters of mutual interest. As the ship prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Sarah walked to the observation deck. It was a luxury on a warship, but the designers had insisted that the crew needed a place to remember what they were fighting for. The deck was a transparent dome that offered a view of the stars without any displays or technology to interfere. Earth hung in the distance, a blue and white jewel against the darkness. Humanity's homeworld, where billions of people lived their lives hoping that the galaxy would treat them fairly. For too long, that hope had been disappointed. Sarah placed her hand against the transparent surface and made a silent promise. The Indomitable would protect them. It would show the galaxy that humanity was not prey, not a victim, not a species to be exploited. They would do it through strength, yes, but also through wisdom. The Indomitable was the most powerful weapon in the galaxy, but weapons alone did not create peace. They created fear, and fear eventually led to more war. No, if humanity wanted real security, they needed to change the system itself. They needed to build alliances, create alternatives to the Council's authoritarian structure, and prove that a better way was possible. It would not be easy. The Council would resist, some violently. There would be more battles, more moments where the Indomitable would have to show its teeth. But Sarah had to believe that in the end reason would prevail. Captain, Jackson's voice came through her comm. We are ready to jump. Do it, Sarah replied. The stars stretched and twisted as the Indomitable leaped into faster-than-light travel. When they re-emerged, it would be in Torvian space, and the next phase of their mission would begin. Behind them, Earth continued its orbit, protected now by the knowledge that its children had built something extraordinary. The Indomitable was not just a ship. It was a statement, a line in the cosmic sand that said humanity would never again be helpless. The galaxy was about to learn what that meant. Some would welcome the change. Others would fight it with everything they had. But one way or another, the old order was crumbling, and humanity, the young species that everyone had underestimated, was leading the way to whatever came next. Sarah smiled as she looked out at the stars rushing past. For the first time since humanity had reached for the cosmos, she felt something like hope. Not the desperate hope of the weak wishing for mercy, but the confident hope of the strong offering partnership. The galaxy was about to discover that humans had not just built a battleship. They had built a future. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Counselor Thessa of the Zephyri Imperium watched the footage for the 5th time, her ancient eyes tracking every detail of the battle. Around her, representatives from dozens of worlds shouted accusations, demands, and recriminations. The carefully maintained order of galactic politics was crumbling, and everyone knew it. This is an outrage, bellowed Ambassador Kreth of the Korthax Dominion, his scales flushed dark with anger. The humans attacked our fleet unprovoked. That is a lie, countered Ambassador Rodriguez of Earth, a small woman with steel in her voice. She had arrived at the council chambers aboard a human shuttle, not the massive battleship everyone now feared, but her presence carried weight nonetheless. Your ships fired first. We have the sensor logs to prove it. Captain Chen disabled your vessels to prevent further bloodshed. She could have destroyed them. You should be grateful, added Ambassador Pelthar of the Torvian Assembly. The Torvians had been quick to align with humanity after the Indomitable visited their home system. The humans showed mercy when they had every right to defend themselves with lethal force. Kreth turned on the Torvian ambassador with fury. You dare side with these primitives? Have you forgotten who protects your trade routes? Protects? Pelthar's tentacles writhed with bitter amusement. You mean who demands tribute in exchange for not attacking them yourselves? We remember very well, Ambassador. The chamber erupted again. Thessa raised her hand, and the ancient gesture still carried enough authority to bring relative quiet. She had lived for 3,000 years, long enough to see empires rise and fall, long enough to recognize a turning point when she saw one. The facts are clear, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. The humans have built a vessel that exceeds our technological capabilities. They have demonstrated both the power to defeat us and the restraint not to destroy us. We can argue about who fired first, but it does not change the fundamental reality. The balance of power has shifted. Then we must shift it back, Kreth insisted. We should gather our full military strength and destroy this human ship before they build more. They are already building more, Rodriguez said calmly. 3 more Indomitable-class vessels are under construction. And before you suggest attacking our construction facilities, remember that you could not get past 1 ship. What will you do against 4? The silence that followed was heavy with implications. Every military strategist in the chamber was doing the same calculation, and they all reached the same conclusion. The Indomitable had disabled 20 warships in minutes, barely using its full capabilities. 4 such vessels could tear through the Council's military like a knife through fabric. Thessa watched Kreth's face as he realized the truth. The Korthax had built their entire culture around military dominance, and now they were facing an opponent they could not defeat through force. It was destroying him from the inside. There is another consideration, Thessa continued. In the 6 weeks since the incident, 17 species have approached humanity about mutual defense agreements. The Torvians, the Pelnari, the Drazen, and others. They are offering resources, technology sharing, and political support. The humans are building an alliance against the Council, Kreth snarled. An alternative to the Council, Rodriguez corrected. We call it the Federation of Free Worlds. Any species can join, regardless of military power or economic strength. 1 vote per member world. Decisions made democratically, mutual defense guaranteed. You are trying to replace us, Thessa said, It was not an accusation, merely an observation. Rodriguez met her gaze without flinching. We are trying to build something better. The Council maintains order through fear and force. You keep species weak so they cannot challenge you. When they are attacked, you offer protection only in exchange for submission. That is not governance. That is extortion. The truth of the words hit like a physical blow. Several of the smaller species representatives nodded, no longer bothering to hide their agreement. Tessa felt something she had not felt in centuries: uncertainty. The Zephyri Imperium had endured for 10,000 years because they understood power. They knew when to fight and when to negotiate, when to show strength and when to show flexibility. But this situation was unprecedented. Humanity should not have been able to build the Indomitable. Their technology was decades behind Council standard, their resources limited, their experience minimal, yet somehow they had leapfrogged centuries of development in just 5 years. How? Her aide, a young Zephyri named Thelxus, had been studying this question obsessively. Tessa had read her reports with growing concern. According to Thelxus, humanity's greatest advantage was not their engineering, it was their culture. They cooperated in ways other species did not. They shared knowledge freely within their society. They took risks that more cautious civilizations avoided. And most importantly, when threatened, they did not just adapt, they revolutionized. We should learn from history, Thelxus had written in her latest report. Humans turned wolves into dogs, mastered fire, split the atom, left their planet. Now they have revolutionized space warfare. The question is not whether we can destroy the Indomitable. The question is what they will innovate next if we force them to. Tessa made a decision. It was not one the Council would like, but it was the right one. Sometimes survival required swallowing pride. I propose a ceasefire, she announced. All hostilities between Council forces and humanity are suspended immediately. We will begin negotiations for a new framework of galactic governance that includes human representation. Kreth looked like he might have a heart attack. You cannot be serious. The Zephyri Imperium bows to no one. I am not bowing, Tessa replied coldly. I am adapting. Something your people might learn to do if you wish to survive the next century. She turned to Rodriguez. We cannot simply abandon the Council structure. It has maintained peace after a fashion for thousands of years. Peace built on oppression is not peace, Rodriguez said, but we are willing to negotiate. Humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We just want to live in it without being prey. Then let us talk, Tessa said, properly without fleets and threats. Can you arrange for Captain Chen to attend a diplomatic summit? Rodriguez smiled. The Indomitable can be here in 3 days. No, Tessa said quickly. The last thing she wanted was that massive battleship hanging over the Council chambers. Neutral ground. The station at Kepler 442, neither Council nor human space. Agreed, Rodriguez said. As the session adjourned, Tessa lingered in the chamber, watching the other delegates file out. Many wore expressions of anger, others of fear, but some looked almost hopeful. The smaller species, the ones who had suffered under Council rule, saw humanity's rise as an opportunity. Thelxus approached her mentor quietly. Do you think negotiations will work? I do not know, Tessa admitted. But the alternative is a war we cannot win. The Korthax may be too proud to see it, but I am not. Humanity has changed the rules of the game. What if other species start developing similar weapons? Thelxus asked. If humans can build the Indomitable, others will try to copy it. They will fail, Tessa said with certainty. Not because the technology is too complex, but because they will miss the point. The Indomitable is powerful because it was built by a species that remembers being helpless. It was designed not for conquest, but for survival. That desperation, that determination, you cannot copy that. She turned to look at the star field visible through the chamber walls. Somewhere out there, the Indomitable was traveling to its next destination, showing other species that the Council could be challenged. And with each system it visited, humanity gained more allies, more support, more legitimacy. The galaxy was changing. The question was whether the old powers would change with it, or fight a futile battle against the inevitable. 3 days later, news reached the Council that changed everything. A Korthax raider fleet had attacked a Zephyri colony world, taking advantage of the chaos to settle old grudges. It was a minor world, poorly defended, and the raiders had overwhelmed the small garrison quickly. The distress call went out across the galaxy. The Safari fleet was too far away to respond in time. The raiders would strip the colony of resources and disappear before help arrived. But there was one ship close enough to help. The Indomitable changed course immediately. Tessa heard about it from her intelligence officers. Captain Chen had not asked for permission, had not demanded payment, had not negotiated terms. She had simply seen people in danger and acted. When the Indomitable arrived at the colony, the raiders fled without firing a shot. The massive human battleship hung in orbit like a guardian angel, and then departed with a simple message. The Federation of Free Worlds protects all who cannot protect themselves. Tessa sat in her private chambers and thought about that message for a long time. The Zafari Imperium had ruled through strength and fear for 10,000 years, but strength without compassion was tyranny, and tyranny always eventually fell. Perhaps it was time for something new. Perhaps humanity, with their strange ideas about democracy and cooperation, were not trying to conquer the galaxy but to heal it. She pulled up the report from Thelxus one more time and read the final line. The humans are dangerous not because they are strong, but because they make others want to be like them. Tessa smiled for the first time in weeks. Yes, she thought. That was the real revolution. 6 months had passed since the confrontation at Earth's doorstep, and the galaxy looked very different now. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable and watched as the second human battleship, the UHSV Resilience, completed its final approach to the newly constructed Harmony Station. The station floated in neutral space between 6 different star systems, a joint construction project funded by humanity and 37 allied species. It was designed to be something the galaxy had never seen before, a place where all species could meet as equals, where decisions were made by consensus rather than decree, where might did not make right. It is beautiful, said Thelxus, the Zephyri scientist who had become an unofficial liaison between her people and humanity. She stood beside Sarah, her silver skin reflecting the station's lights. I never imagined I would see such a thing in my lifetime. Neither did I, Sarah admitted. 6 months ago we were alone. Now look at us. The Resilience was a testament to how much had changed. Its hull bore the flags of 12 different species who had contributed to its construction. Its crew was mixed, human, Torvian, Pelnari, and others working side by side. It was not just a weapon. It was a symbol of what cooperation could achieve. The Council is dying, Thelxus said quietly. Did you know that the Korthax Dominion lost 8 client species last month? They all petitioned to join the Federation instead. I heard, Sarah replied. How is Counselor Thessa handling it? Better than most. She sees the writing on the wall. The younger Zephyri, like myself, want change. We are tired of maintaining an empire through fear. But the old guard, Thelxus shook her head. They cannot accept that their time is over. A communication alert interrupted them. It was Ambassador Rodriguez from the station. Captain Chen, we are ready for you. The ceremony is about to begin. Sarah took one last look at the stars before heading to the shuttle bay. Today was important, perhaps the most important day since the Indomitable first revealed itself to the galaxy. The Federation of Free Worlds was officially being established. The charter had been signed by 42 species, with more expected to join in the coming months. And for the first time in galactic history, humanity would not just be participants but leaders in a multi-species alliance. The shuttle ride to the station was short. Sarah wore her dress uniform, a simple blue and silver design that contrasted sharply with the elaborate outfits worn by many other species. Humanity had learned that sometimes simplicity spoke louder than grandeur. The main hall of Harmony Station was packed. Representatives from dozens of worlds had gathered, and the air hummed with translation devices working overtime to handle the many languages being spoken. At the center of the hall stood a holographic display showing the Federation Charter. Ambassador Rodriguez met Sarah at the entrance. Are you ready for this? As ready as I will ever be, Sarah replied. Who would have thought a battleship captain would end up helping write galactic law? Someone who understands that peace is built on strength and wisdom together, Rodriguez said. You gave us the strength. Now we provide the wisdom. The ceremony began with speeches from various representatives. The Torvians spoke of their hope for fair trade and mutual respect. The Pelnari spoke of justice for past wrongs and a future without fear. Even some former council species spoke, explaining why they had chosen to leave the old system. Then it was humanity's turn. Sarah had not expected to speak. That was Rodriguez's job. But the ambassador had insisted. "They need to hear from you," she had said. "You are the one who showed them what we could do. Now show them why we did it." Sarah walked to the center of the hall, very aware that billions of beings across the galaxy were watching this broadcast. She had faced down warships without fear. But public speaking was somehow more terrifying. "I am a soldier," she began. "Not a politician or a diplomat. But I have learned something in my time commanding the indomitable. Power without purpose is just violence. Strength without compassion is just tyranny." She looked around the hall, meeting the eyes of various representatives. Humanity built the indomitable because we were tired of being victims. For 100 years we were told we were weak, that we did not matter, that we should be grateful for whatever scraps the powerful threw our way. We were attacked, exploited, and dismissed. So we built something that could not be dismissed. But here is what the Council did not understand. We did not build it to conquer. We built it to protect not just ourselves, but anyone who needed protection. Because we remember what it feels like to be helpless, and we never want anyone else to feel that way. She activated a holographic display, showing the indomitable and resilient side by side. These ships are the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. But look at them closely. Look at their crews. Humans, yes, but also Torvians, Zephyri, Pelnari, and others. Look at how they are being used. Not to threaten, but to defend. Not to demand tribute, but to offer protection freely. That is the difference between the Council and the Federation. The Council rules through fear. They keep everyone weak so they can stay strong. The Federation grows through cooperation. We make everyone stronger because we understand that real security comes from having allies, not subjects. There was silence in the hall as her words sank in. Then slowly applause began. It started with the Torvians, spread to the Pelnari, and soon every species in the hall was showing their approval in whatever way their culture expressed agreement. Counselor Thessa entered the hall at that moment. She was not supposed to be there. The council had officially boycotted the ceremony, but she came anyway, her ancient dignity evident in every movement. "Captain Chen," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet hall, "I am here against the wishes of my government, but I needed to see this for myself. You are welcome here." "Counselor," Sarah said carefully. Thessa looked around the hall, at the representatives of species who had once feared the Zephyri, who now stood as equals. "I have lived for 3,000 years, she said. "I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have witnessed wars that consumed entire star systems, and in all that time I have never seen anything like this." She turned to face the assembled representatives. "The Zephyri Imperium has ruled for 10,000 years through strength and dominance. We believe that was the only way to maintain order in a chaotic galaxy. But watching humanity, I have learned something. There is another way." The hall held its collective breath. "I am formally requesting that the Zephyri Imperium be allowed to join the Federation of Free Worlds," Thessa announced. "Not as rulers or conquerors, but as equals. We bring our knowledge, our resources, and our admission that we were wrong." The shock was visible on every face. Sarah herself could hardly believe what she was hearing. The Zephyri joining the Federation, it would change everything. "The Council will never approve this," someone said. "The Council is already dead," Thessa replied. "It just does not know it yet. Species are leaving every day. The Korthax are trying to hold it together through force, but that only drives more away. I choose to be part of the future, not the past." Ambassador Rodriguez stepped forward. "The Federation Charter is clear. Any species can join if they commit to its principles: democracy, mutual defense, and respect for all members. Counselor Thessa, if you are serious, if the Zephyri truly wish to join us as equals, then we welcome you." "I am serious," Thessa said, "and I believe I can convince my people, especially the younger generations. They are tired of empire. They want something new." The ceremony continued, but everything had changed. With the Zephyri joining, the Federation would have access to 10,000 years of accumulated knowledge and technology. More importantly, it would prove that the new system could accept even former enemies as partners. That night Sarah stood once more on the observation deck of the Indomitable, but this time she was not alone. Thelxus was there, along with several officers from other species who served on the ship. "Do you think it will last?" asked Lieutenant Morrison, Sarah's tactical officer. "The Federation, I mean. Will it really be different from the Council?" Sarah considered the question carefully. I do not know, she admitted. We are trying to build something that has never existed before, a true alliance of equals. It will be hard. There will be disagreements, conflicts, maybe even fights. But yes, I think it can work. Why? Thelxus asked. Because we are not building it on fear, Sarah replied. The council worked for a while, but it was always held together by the threat of violence. The moment someone came along who was not afraid, like us, it started to crumble. The Federation is different. It is built on mutual benefit and respect. That is harder to break. She looked at the Resilience, hanging in space beside the Indomitable. Two massive battleships, powerful enough to challenge anyone, but choosing to protect rather than dominate. We built these ships to prove we could not be pushed around anymore, Sarah continued. But we are using them to prove something more important, that strength and kindness are not opposites. You can be powerful and still be good. You can have the ability to destroy and choose to create instead. The galaxy will test that belief, Morrison said. I know, Sarah agreed. The Korthax have not given up. There are other powers out there who will not like what we are building. There will be more fights, more challenges, but we will face them together, as allies, not as subjects and masters. A message came through from Earth Command. The 3rd and 4th Indomitable class vessels, Defiance and Perseverance, were ahead of schedule. They would be operational within the year, and both would have mixed crews like the Resilience. Sarah smiled. Humanity had come a long way from the scared species that had barely survived its first contact with the galaxy. They had learned, adapted, and grown. And in doing so, they had not just protected themselves. They had started to heal a galaxy that had been sick with fear and oppression for far too long. Captain, Jackson's voice came over the comm. We have a request from the Drazen Collective. Pirates are raiding their outer colonies and they are asking for help. Set course immediately, Sarah ordered, and send a message to the Resilience. Time to show the galaxy what the Federation Navy can do. As the two massive battleships powered up their engines and prepared to jump, Sarah felt a sense of rightness. This was what they had built the Indomitable for, not to threaten or conquer, but to protect and serve. The galaxy was changing. The old order was dying, and something new was being born. It would not be perfect. There would be struggles and setbacks. But for the first time in galactic history, there was hope that things could be better. And humanity, the young species that everyone had underestimated, had shown them the way. The Indomitable leaped into faster-than-light travel, carrying with it the promise of a better future. Behind it, Harmony Station glowed against the darkness, a beacon of hope in a galaxy that had known too much fear. The story of humanity's rise was far from over, but this chapter, at least, had a happy ending. They had been tested and found their strength. They had been challenged and proven their worth. And most importantly, they had shown that power used wisely could change the world, or in this case, change the galaxy.